So first of all, I took a look at my business plan after that last mentoring session we had, and I realized that business plan was very disjointed. And I had had these recurring thoughts about that before, and
Yep.
just hadn't really put it together. So I've gone back and I'm starting to chop it all off and put it into something that resembles what I think a logical sequence should be, according to what you've been talking to me about. So I know I sent you an email today about the business plan, about what I could possibly hack away, because I
Yep.
do I do think there's a lot of information in there I can either compress into from multiple sections, or I could just get rid of completely.
Can I suggest some a way to format this
Sure.
rather than your email,
Okay.
which I won't bother talking about or sharing. Um, I think would help you to get the idea and the word business plan out of your head because it's not really what you're writing. To me, a business plan for somebody like you is more in the numbers, right? I'm gonna in month one, my cash flow is gonna look like this. Your business plan right now is that cash flow that you've been working on, which I think we're going to talk about today as well. Uh, you know what I mean? Like it's not what you're trying to write is an investment proposal document. You're trying to get lenders and investors interested and hand them
Right.
something,
Right.
right? You're
Yeah.
not writing a plan for yourself or just in general.
No, and I felt like that's what that plan ended up being.
100%, that's what it was. That's
Yeah.
what we talked about last time.
So when you
So I'm
started,
going to try and change your terminology if you don't mind. And
okay,
you can write this down if you're writing things down. And of course, you'll get the video after. But
I'll get the video from you. Yeah.
yeah, I think you should call it a confidential information memorandum, a CIM, typical in the finance and CI and M&A industry. Okay, so not a business plan, a confidential information memorandum. And I wrote this on my whiteboard is why I'm looking over there. So your first page should be a cover page, and all it should say is the name of your company, confidential information memorandum, the date that you've issued it, version one, if it's version one, because you update these things as you go.
Right.
That's your cover page. Your second page is a table of contents. Okay, so that somebody could look quickly. Um, your third page, just get rid of this executive summary. This is like a 10-page memo. You don't need an executive summary, but you should have a one-pager called opportunity. And the opportunity is what you want the target, the investor, the lender to focus on. We're starting a business. We've got some technology that's proprietary. We have a management team that is experienced in selling this stuff to our market, which, by the way, is a big market. And I don't know what are your other
Selling
uh,
points.
yeah, thank you. What's going to make you win,
Well, I mean,
right?
one, it's a captive market. There's not a lot of competition out there at the price point that our market requires for our set of functionalities. There just
Yep,
isn't.
right. So you say that our margins are huge, or at least our
Right.
markups are huge, right? And we generate lots of cash flow. And so you as an investor can get a great return on your investment and you could exit.
And
Okay.
then we provide an adequate level of support, correct, on the rest of the
Yeah.
doc.
So that's the opportunity section. So it's not really an executive summary in the sense of it's just repeating stuff that was already in the that's to follow in the next sections. But it is taking from the body of the document and saying, hey, as an investor, here's the things I want you to focus on. Here's my case for you. Okay. So that would be the next page. And then the next section should be called just business. And that could be 2 pages to 3 pages. And you've got this in here already. You've got, business descriptions, missions, values, that sort of stuff. Okay. Explain what your business is and try to do that in a couple of pages. The next section would be industry slash market slash customers, whatever you want to call that. But that whole marketing section, here's our target market, here's how big we see it as, here's the key success factors, this is what we provide, this is what our competitors provide, and that would be your sort of your three C's of marketing. And then your, you know, we outcompete on price. Our product is meets the key success factors of that target market for whatever reason. Our distribution is going to be as follows, and here's how we're going to promote it. And sort of that's a whole market strategy section that you could summarize. And again, you've got a lot of that already in the old plan. This is just trying to format it and make it fine tuned for you. You understand?
Yes, I do. That's
Okay. After that, management should be like one page or one and a half at most. So there's the three of you right now, sort of the 2 paragraph bio on each person, good enough for this sort of document. And then the last section would be financial, which you don't really have at all in your plan. And the financial is, by the way, in that opportunity section at the beginning, you should say, hey, company needs like 1.25 million. I'm putting in 250, plus I'm putting up my house as security, and the equity I think on that is X, right? So that should be explained in that opportunity section. And in the financial section, this is where you're attaching that cash flow model that you're working on, and you put around a little commentary around it. It's like, hey, here's the schedule, and it shows that if you just scroll forward to month 3, 4, 5 on the weekly basis, but months, in aggregate, if I add up 4 weeks for month 4 or whatever, it shows that I have positive cash flow and it's sustainable cash flow. And here in writing are the assumptions that went into that. I've assumed that we've sold so many units. I assume that we're buying them, at this price. I've assumed our collections are as follows. Just broad assumptions, right? And your goal is to get somebody interested enough in the math and in the management team that you understand what you're doing, but not enough that you're not bogging them down with due diligence level material. That's later. That's in the data room, right? But you need that financial section, and that should probably be a couple of pages of writing plus a schedule. And so if you add that up, cover page 1, table of contents 1, opportunity 1, business 2, customers 2, management 2, financial 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, like that gives you your 10, 11 pages. And if you go up to 12 or 13, if you have to, that's okay too. Right.
okay. All
That's,
right.
that's, so if I take your email and all the stuff that you've written in there, it's not entirely different. It's just formatted differently. Correct?
Well, which email? Because I sent you several. You're talking about the cash flow statement or
No. The one where you're talking about your business plan, like,
okay. All right.
right, that you sent me a bunch of different
What
sections.
can I
Like yours
drop?
has got an executive summary. I'm suggesting you don't need that, but you do need an opportunity. A business overview is like we talked about that. You've got sales and marketing. That's similar to my marketing section. You got a management, um, but I think you can. So I've got that, but you don't have a financial, and you've got a lot of action plan and operations. And I think that's too much detail for this.
Okay.
That's for you,
All
right?
right.
Right. You're communicating in that cash flow you're working on the milestones. Those
Yeah.
are the milestones.
Yeah. This is what I needed, was what the context that was what a funder would expect,
Yeah.
because yeah. So okay, this is good. Yeah.
But I think you need to know those action plans, because if I'm the funder, which I'm not, but if I were, I'm going to look at that and then I go, okay, like break this down for me, Doug. What are the action plans in the next 3 months that you're going to do with my money?
So
And
this would be more of the data room stuff.
yeah, or just discussion.
Okay, but okay. Yeah, I do. I've been doing a wholesale reordering of the business plan today, because it just didn't make sense how it laid out. Parts were
Yeah.
all over the place. So I started there. I started to rework some of the numbers and the dates and get it up to date and make sure it's all current. So I'll take what you're talking about, cut it down further, reorder it once more, and then what we're going to work on with regards to the cash flow statement today.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to move on to the cash flow?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So if I All right, I'm sharing the screen. So I'm gonna make this larger for my small eyes.
And if it looks like I'm no longer looking at you, it's because I've moved it over to a bigger monitor.
Okay.
And so,
All right. So to bring everybody up to speed, my VP sent you a template of somebody else's and changed some of the numbers and removed all the names, etc. So you're working with the template here, but I think I'm fearful, Doug, that this sent you down the wrong path because what you're trying to do for your purpose doesn't need to be that complicated. Okay. And so I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can look at you and give this message. You, the purpose of a model is what?
it's to give you, well, for me, it means I get a starting point so I know how to make it mine, basically, for my scenario.
Sure. Sure. That's a good way to put words to it. To me, I always say like it's got a couple of intentions. One is it forces you to think about your business and to put that into numbers to see if your business case actually makes sense for yourself. Right. And have you learned about your business in the exercise that you've been doing
Oh yeah, lots
on
of
this?
stuff. Yes.
Okay, good. So it forces you to do that. Number two, it communicates, it's a tool to communicate your plan to third parties, to potential investors, right?
Correct.
So that's why sort of we force you, or not force you, I'm just coaching, but we ask you to adhere to a certain format because that's something that investors and financial people understand pretty well. Okay, so it forces you to go through this exercise and to think about your business accomplished or in process, and in the end you end up with a document that's simple and that can be used as a tool to communicate a narrative, a numerical narrative to potential investors. And then, if you do it properly, what you should be able to do is use it as an ongoing real time monitoring tool to test your assumptions. Because the other thing this model does for investors and for yourself is you start to identify, and you can write out in the financial section of your business plan the key assumptions, because hopefully what you learned when you were building your model is you started to figure out like, oh wow, like 30 days credit is way different than 60 days credit, or if my pricing is like this and my margins are like that, it really changes this cash flow dramatically. Or if I structure management pay this way, I run out of money, and if I structure it this way, things are pretty good. Like, it helps you make decisions as to what makes sense for your business. Have you experienced any of that yet?
I have.
Okay.
Quite
And
frankly, a
so
lot. So
a lot, right? And
yeah.
so those are your assumptions. You write those down. These are the key assumptions that drove this model. And the type of model you're doing, a 13-week cash flow, although you're going to blow yours out way past 13 weeks, has a lot of little detailed assumptions in it. And when you ever get to the point where you're doing what we call a rolling monthly model of all three financial statements, which is a different sort of longer view thing, what you find is every business, no matter how complicated, really boils down to like 4 or 5 key assumptions. And often those assumptions are common among different businesses. For example, one of them would be margin, contribution margin. Okay. But it's the building of the model that helps you identify and understand those assumptions. Because now you know, if you've built a cash flow model with, say, 30 days collections on receivables, I haven't looked at your model to know if that's even a relevant assumption, but just hypothetically, if that's what it was, and now you're managing your business day to day, and you know you're not collecting from this guy until 45 days, now you go, that's a problem. I remember building that cash flow model at 45 days and I ran out of money, right? Like, I need to collect on 30 days. And so if you build the model properly, you can start then saying, okay, this was my set of assumptions. And then every week you can say, okay, this is what actually happened. And you can put that into the model, and you can look at if your assumptions are coming true, if your projections are coming true. And if they're not, you can then adjust those assumptions going forward and
Okay.
keep this a live thing as opposed to a one-time thing.
So if I'm looking at this spreadsheet with the different tabs, the first one is the plan. The second one
Exactly.
is actual.
So that's why I explained all this to you. So
all right.
what he sent you is more complicated than you need right now. Okay. The plan, which he calls base case, was for whatever model this was this. Okay. And then what he did is every week he would update this, and we put our actuals in green. So when we build a model, this would have not been green the week before, and then we put the actuals in and we put them in green, and we just double check our assumptions and we keep rolling this thing forward. You understand?
Well,
Okay.
yeah, I do, but isn't this work? Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here. To me, the cash flow base case should stay static.
It
And the
does.
and the
That's
cash
why it's in
flow.
a separate tab.
Okay, so the cash flows
Okay.
into your action tab is where
Yeah,
you.
and then what the variance is doing is it's taking the actuals and comparing it to the base case.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, but you don't need this and you don't need that. What you need is you don't need any historical because you don't have any. All you
Correct.
need is a model starting at time week 1 and going forward as long as you can. Okay, and you can go forward forever. And the reason for that is if you've been putting numbers in, you've quickly learned that after a couple of months, the numbers just start repeating themselves.
Yes. I mean,
Right.
like I said in my email to you, I zeroed out everything I didn't really understand until I could talk to you about what that line item means. And then I'll put it back in.
Okay. So do you understand the structure of this so far, and that you can delete these 2 tabs? And, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, so that doesn't help you at all.
But
Bear
you
with
mean
me.
the cash flow and the variance tabs. For our purposes right now, we can delete that.
Yeah, so you don't need this tab and you don't need that tab. All you need is a base case, and you don't need any of this historical stuff. All you need is from week 1 going forward.
Okay, so I got it. I can update that.
Okay. Now, are these collection numbers you put in, or did
Yeah,
they
they
come from
are.
a template? Okay.
Any numbers for the most part that are in there should be mine. I like I
Okay.
said, I zeroed out everything else.
Okay. So you actually have 210,000 of real receivables right now?
Oh no, this is starting on September 1st. See, my started the week number 1 in the green.
Okay.
I didn't know that
Okay.
actuals.
Gotcha. September.
So, and I just
There you
started
go.
with an opening balance, because this is a plan, not actuals. I just planned on 500 grand as a starting point, just as a,
So this would
like an
be your
investment.
funding.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would call that funding. What have you? Okay.
So I would change the name of that line item.
Yeah, I would call that investor funding or something along those lines.
Okay.
Why not be specific if you can?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I'm going to skip the expenses for a minute. So I'm going to come down here. Like you're not starting off with receivables.
No, please forgive me for the ignorance of some of my questions.
No. That's fine. I'm just
Totally
pointing out.
is a exercise in learning. I love it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
hyped to get learn all this stuff, but it is definitely. I've been an engineer all my career.
Well, this will be easy for you.
Okay.
Dead simple. You don't have any receivables when you start your business September 1.
And receivables are defined as the
Accounts receivable. This is
sales.
I sold somebody to somebody and they didn't pay me yet. Now they owe me money.
Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Now he made this. This is way too complicated. So personally, I would get rid of all those rows. But this should just be your revenue. So here's the formula for receivables. Opening receivables, so the amount you start with at the beginning of a week, plus what you sell, minus what you collect, equals your ending receivables.
Okay, so going back to your original definitions, account receivables is just basically monies I am owed, correct?
From your customers.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Right.
So remember that formula for AR? That's called a roll forward formula. So what you start with plus what you sold, so you're adding to that, minus what you collected, so you're taking away from that, equals what you have at the end of the period.
Got
Super
it.
simple. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so your opening is 0. In here, you should be putting your revenue. Week 1, I'm going to sell 0. Week 2, I'm going to sell whatever. Okay, so you're going to put
It's
your
that 30. I'll just bring that 36,778 down.
so you're going to
That's
do 36,000 every month,
it's.
basically.
I'm basically saying 10 units a month.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just
Oh
going to
no,
force in some
I'm
numbers. You're
sorry.
not getting
10 units a week. Sorry.
right. I understood. Okay. So that's going to be your revenue. You just call this revenue. And then your collections, when do you collect that 36,000?
Upon,
Right?
yeah, it would be upon delivery of the units, whatever that average would be.
In full, so you don't have any receivables?
Usually the process is we ship it out to them, they test it, it passes the test and they give us the full amount of the money.
And you invoice when you ship it out to them for testing.
Yes.
So the testing process takes 30 days, 2
It
weeks.
just depends upon their schedule. It could be immediate. It could be as much as 3 weeks out.
Right. So you want to make an average. So what you want to do is just say, okay, well, I sold 36,000 in this week, but I collected 0 of that 36,000 this week.
Right.
Right. And in fact, I'm going to collect it. I'm going to assume I'm going to collect that 4 months out. So my collections come to here.
Got it.
4 weeks out. Sorry. You understand?
I do.
And I'm going to make that a negative. Okay. So I sold 36,000 here. And this should be equal to my opening balance plus my billings minus my, oops, minus my collections. I'm going to forget about the adjustments for now. So I got 36,000 at weekend. And then the next week, I haven't collected anything yet, but I billed another 36, and now I have 72,000 in receivables.
So
Make sense?
yeah, it does. And the minus on the collections just means that it's minus with respect to the accounts receivable.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Right.
next week, same thing. Okay. And then the week after, now look what happens. I started with 108. I sold 36, but I collected 36.
Stay the same.
So I ended with 108.
Yeah.
And if I were to push this out, I would see that same effect happening all the time. Why am I not seeing that same effect? There we go. Okay.
Okay.
So that's all you're doing there. This is all, you can get rid of all that. That's just testing for whether the assumption makes sense. Because when you start getting actual results in, you're going to say, oh, you know what? I didn't collect that 36,000 in 4 weeks. I collected in 3 weeks or 5 weeks. And you're going to find that has a huge impact on your cash flow.
Okay. But for right now, I can just hide the line 60 and below, correct?
Yeah, you don't need that right now. Again, that sort of comes back to testing the formulas out and see how they make sense. We can talk about that later if it becomes relevant. Now, if I go up here, your collections become negative. They should be C56 in the way that we've done it. Boom. Okay, so you collected 0 in weeks 1 and 2. Oops. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So this should be C, not D. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast on the modeling here, but I'm
Don't
just
worry
trying to
about it.
do that to explain.
Yeah.
So you've collected 0 from your revenue. You collected 0 from your 2 weeks of revenue. You collected 0 from your 3 weeks of revenue. And then you started collecting the revenue from this period.
Got it.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. So that's what that is. And then, by week, you asked me before, what kind of things can you finance and not finance? Well, here you've got 108,000 in receivables that if you had a factoring facility or something, you could show the factoring guys, hey, I'm planning by week 3 here or week 4 to have about 100 grand receivables. I'd like to get 60, 70, 80% on that.
Okay.
All right. Now, materials, this is your inventory buildup.
Correct.
Okay, so you understood that. You can get rid of this materials overdue. That's not relevant to you. That is when you're working with a client that has a bunch of like old suppliers that are unpaid and need to be restructured. We kind of put that in there, but that's not relevant to you. Okay. Labor costs, and this is gross. And if you want, you could do labor costs net, but put in your withholding taxes separately if they need to be paid in a different week. Sometimes that happens depending on where you are. You understand?
1 second. Hold on. Sorry.
Okay.
Multitasking, and I don't do it the best. Okay. Can you repeat that question, Scott? I'm sorry.
Sure. So your labor pay, your gross pay here, you can do it that way, or you can separate it into net pay and taxes due, because sometimes they get paid on different schedules.
Okay.
Okay. But that's a nuance. And so you don't pay rent every week. This should be like rent zero
Every
zero
fourth
zero,
week. Every fourth week. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
right?
That's way too much.
So yeah, so make this accurate. But here I think is the important part. If I were to extend these assumptions out a little while, say to the end of November, what am I going to find? I'm just going to force that right now. Oops, you wish it was 36,000 that week. What I'm going to find if I look at the last, why did you stop buying materials? Because you have plenty?
Yeah, that was all I needed.
Okay, until when? Like you're going to have to.
This covers 100 units. So this is a 3-month.
Okay.
And so I may have to adjust the figures a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
pretty close to what I would have to expend on parts
Right.
for that
Gotcha.
period, for this period.
Okay. So your operating cash flow here starts out, this doesn't count because it includes the 500 grand, but you're losing 55,000 this week, 55,000 this week, 20,000 this week. But pretty quickly with these assumptions, you start generating weekly cash,
Okay.
which is great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it is not plausible that you're not buying any inventory in here. And if you are, you shouldn't be buying this much up front. It would dramatically decrease your need for upfront working capital. Right? If this was $180,000 spread out evenly over these periods, you wouldn't need so much equity to start your business. You understand what I mean?
Okay, I'll spread it out.
Yeah. The more you buy, the more financing you need. So you want to kind of match that as best you can. But what I'm already seeing, my point here being, is if we were to spread that over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 100 and, well, actually, it'd be about 10 grand a week, somewhere in that range. If we were to just say 10 grand a week, you're still positive every week on cash if your numbers are correct. And
Okay.
that's a great thing. I can't tell you, Doug, how many times I see these, and this is just negative everywhere all the time. And you, you need to fundamentally change your business to figure out a way to make some cash.
Right. Okay. Well, I will. I'll make that change.
Okay. Did that answer your cash flow questions?
What would fall underneath professional fees?
Accountants, lawyers. Um,
Well, I've got
you're gonna
accounting and legal up above at line 30.
Okay. Well, then anything beyond that.
Okay. Um, the credit card on the sample one showed some
Like
pretty
if you don't, yeah. So what happens in some clients is they start spending everything on their credit card and then they circumvent the whole system. And so you can delete that. Like if any of these are not relevant to you, just delete them.
okay.
Like you
Um,
don't have loan. Well, you might have loan payments eventually, but you don't right now. So there's lots of stuff on here, like a vehicle lease. Maybe that's not relevant to you.
I don't think it will be. I mean, eventually, maybe the business will do that. I could see us doing that, but not up front. I kind of want to keep things as simple as possible.
Yep.
Uh, Office and IT versus rent. What
Well, rent is so. Where are you going to run this business from?
domestic sales are going to be run from basically, I'm going to rent out my shop to the company and use it for storage of product inventory, and also, just a base of operations, and use one of our rooms as the office for the bookkeeping and shipping function, which is going to be handled by my wife.
Right.
Um, so that's where the rent is involved.
Okay.
And then the international sales will be handled by our manufacturer in his warehouse. He's just going to store those units there, run a QA program or testing program against the units he creates, and then I will run the testing program here and manage those customers from here for the domestic.
Right. Right. So your rent is exactly as you described. You're going to want to say in your financial section of this CIM that it's related party because you have a lot of related party stuff going on in your business and you need to be open and straight up with an investor about that so they can debate
Okay.
with you.
All right.
Okay. But Office and IT is like computers, software programs, that sort of stuff. And maybe you don't have any, or maybe you have like one $2,500 expenditure and you're done at this stage.
Okay. I got it. I'll
Yeah.
just put software there basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
And if this is too detailed, you could just cram all of that crap into miscellaneous if you want,
well, nah,
right? And delete some lines. That's all good.
support software. That's what I'll call it.
Yep.
Basically, you've got Git, which is a code repository. There's going to be, there, there's several things that are going to have to be there. There's going to be a monthly cost,
Yeah.
and so okay. Insurance. I did ask you a question about insurance.
I didn't
I
see
know.
it. So,
Okay. I'm going to be getting directors and officers D&O insurance, and I've been kind of researching on the web what different people think about.
why are you going to get DO insurance?
Well, one guy that I want to join the board, he doesn't want to join unless I do have that available.
Okay.
That was
I mean,
mostly
you live in a jurisdiction where it may not be a bad idea to have DO insurance.
well
Um,
after having going through what we did with the company A, and even some of the stuff I've gone through with one of the partners lately. Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
it's a wise choice.
Just remember that DNO does not cover fraud. It does not cover malfeasance. It does not cover director liabilities to the extent that you just decided not to pay your withholding taxes to the government. Those sorts of things. Okay. So it's, be as specific as you can about what you're trying to cover with your DNO. And you should obviously be talking to a broker about that. Having said all that, what's your question?
What are there other types of insurance that I should be concerned about as a startup?
Well, general liability, perhaps for your talk to the insurance broker about that as well.
Okay.
Right. I don't want to talk about because we're on an open forum. I don't want to talk about what your product does and what risk happens if it fails. And potential liability about that. Perhaps it's zero, but perhaps it's something. And so you're going to want to talk to an insurance broker about that.
Okay. All right. I will.
All right. So your typical types of insurance, apart from D&O, would be your property casualty. So that's, I'm insuring my building and my manufacturing equipment, and against theft and fire and all that sort of stuff. So you don't have much of that going on, maybe a little bit, but not much of that. And then your general liability, which is, am I going to get sued by somebody out in the universe for my business practices or something that I sold or something one of my employees did? Definitely talk to a broker about that. And then there's other sort of rider types of like cyber insurance and things that I don't know off the top of my head. But just talk to a good insurance broker, and they'll give you the full lay of the land.
Got it. Okay. What about subcontracts?
Okay, subcontractors in this model, you probably don't need it, but that's like they're not actually on the payroll, so they're not labor, but they're a contractor doing the same thing. And so that's probably not a relevant line item for you.
I'll hide that one and change the name to subcontractors. Right. Good. Okay. Is that it? I added fuel costs just for basically sales, because they're going to be driving around to different places. And
yeah. So what's going to happen, like I said at the beginning, Doug, I'm going to stop sharing now.
Okay.
That would be helpful. Like I said at the beginning, the one of the purposes of the model is for you to go through this thought process. What line items are relevant? In what amounts? What are the pay periods on that? Right? So you figure that out, but you also figure out what's not relevant. And then the next part of that model is when you actually start your business, you're going to be, okay, week 1, this is what actually happened compared to what I thought was going to happen. Oh, that assumption doesn't make sense. I need to adjust that going forward. And right. And it makes a huge difference.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to make all these changes. Can you send me a copy of what you just marked up?
I don't even know that I saved it that way, but I am going to send you I will. Yes.
Oh, you're going to send me a copy of this. So you're
going to get this whole recording, so you can go through it at your leisure.
Yes.
And you should be able to see it. That makes sense?
It does.
Once useful coaching session number 2.
Oh, it was very useful. Thank you so much. I'll get all these changes. I'm really pushing forward on as fast as I can. I'll probably have to you both an updated cash flow statement and an updated, what we call the CIM.
Yeah.
This week, by the end of the week. I'm trying to get this done like this week. So as much as I
can. For your info on the CIM, and for people listening, a lot of people like to do decks, PowerPoint slides to pitch their deal. To me, a CIM is a deck in words. Okay, that's what you're doing. And the reason is because if you write it out, you can communicate a narrative. You're always trying to sell a narrative. This is what's going on. This is what's exciting about this. This is why I'm going to win with my team and my opportunity. You can't really do that in a deck with some bullet points.
You're right. It kind of breaks the association, or disassociates. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So if you're trying to sell a product like a business that is, like we used to do that in the Canadian cannabis industry, where you could just get $70 million for saying you were going to open a cannabis grow up, and all you needed was a 3 slide PowerPoint, and you got all the money you wanted at $150 million valuation. You don't need a narrative for that. You, my friend, need a narrative. And that's what CIM is for.
Yeah, I do. You're right. Yeah.